In the Navy, you can be a manly Viking in the Navy. There is lots and lots of piking. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good. So, hi everyone. Welcome to the City State Entertainment Camelot Unchained weekly update. It's a rare Andrew weekly update, so who knows what's going to happen. I haven't been out in front in a while. So, before we get into it, I want to introduce everyone to Ian the intern. He has been with us all summer, and we wanted to give him a chance to say hi to everybody before he turned back into a college student.
Metamorphosis.
So, how would you describe your experience with City State Entertainment? Watching as we ran around frantically screaming, trying to put a beta build together.
Entertaining. It was enjoyable.
City State Entertainment, inside and out. That, by the way, is totally the slogan of the Viking Navy. Anything you want to say to all of these fine folks while you have them here? It's your chance, man.
Enjoy Capture Point and kill everybody that you can.
Yeah, Capture Point is cool, really. It's not as immediately accessible. I still think it's going to be, like, turn into the favorite once there is more testing time on it. Speaking of testing, we are doing another big weekend test. It is going to be on Wormling. It will be Saturday, August 11th, which is tomorrow. Be noon to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 a.m. to noon U.S. Pacific Time, or 1600 to 1900 UTC, if, you're down with UTC. Yeah, you know me. You're wearing the gangsta hat, but you just don't have, like, the 90s rap. You weren't born in the 90s, were you?
End of the 90s, 97.
Okay, So, what is going to be on Wormling? Right now, we're kind of in sort of a two-track where, Wormling is the stable build from last week with just a few incremental fixes, while more aggressive changes are getting worked on and stabilized and polished on Hatchery and Nuada Prep. So, major things on Wormling to note for this weekend. Just lots and lots of UI bug fixes, way more than I can list, but you'll notice them when they're there. A fix for one of the single most annoying things about our renderer, which is stuff in shadows just being way, way, way too dark. It was literally like there was a missing -1. I'm not kidding. Like, in a pixel shader, and so that is fixed. That is fixed now. You'll appreciate that. Also, very visible thing, something that just barely didn't make the cut was replacing like the ugly gray and orange boxes that are around interactable objects in the world. That was always meant to be a temp dev placeholder, and we just, we came right down to the wire on replacing it when we had to say, okay, this is the beta build, but yay, we finally replaced that. So when you mouse over stuff, you'll get a cursor, you'll get particles, light will shine down from the sky. It, looks like a professional game instead of a stupid placeholder thing. Several combat fixes and skill fixes. The biggest one you're going to notice is we got rid of a very, very exploitable thing, which was stones, like from stone healers, and would affect other stones. So you could put two invulnerability stones right down next to each other, and they would make each other invulnerable, or stones that were healing each other, and so it allowed creation of super exploitable combinations by players working together to defeat the other realm, which is good, but we want you to do it without exploits. So that should improve balance on the healers a lot. So another big request, just a little, we forgot to cross this T and dot this I. The game does not crush your CPU when you minimize the window, so you can actually, minimize the game and go do something else without your PC going to a crawl. And also just general perf improvements and crash fixes. There's, like, Matt and I worked together on one fix that was just 25% of the CPU, or 25% of all crashes was just like one dumb bug. So that's what'll be on Wormling. It's not a major shift, but in the aggregate, it's this feels better. And meanwhile, we have unlocked hatchery for like all the stuff that was, oh man, that's too unstable. We can't check that in right before beta, and so UIT people are seeing everything that, like, I think DB had an entire month's worth of sounds that he had not put in just because we didn't want to break anything, and so there's lots of stuff new there on hatchery, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
Because it's time for the top 10 list. Can we? All right. On the fly, compose a top 10 list song.
You can do it.
You can do it. You're wearing the gangster rap hat, so.
Where it's at. Oh, that hurts. Here's the top 10. Here's what's coming up. Gonna tell you what's going on hatchery, what's changing, what's up.
Yeah?
Solid.
Now all you need is Max to be your hype man, and you'll be set. Okay, so, what we've, and of course I'm going to make a liar out of you, because top 10. Number one thing is we're just testing and circling through all the stuff for beta that, went in and dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and that, now we're in a really good place. Well, we were in a pretty good place last weekend. Now it's an even better place. So that consumed a fair bit of time for especially Tim on coordinating the tests. Meanwhile, for me, and for Ash, and for George, and for Tyler, well, not Tyler, and for Mark, Tyler's on a much, much, much needed vacation. So it was mostly planning and more planning. So we sort of, we were in a full court, just a full court press on getting beta together. And so there wasn't necessarily there was not a lot of work going on towards next milestone in parallel. Like, there's not, the people who are fixing beta stuff were, not also doing something else. We're not that big a team. So, we had a kind of a reset and figured out our planning and prioritization. The two biggest things, and, what is our path to the next milestone? The two biggest things that are going to be in the next major beta release are a bunch of graphical and rendering things and building destruction. So those are the super visible stuff that we planned out. So, there was a thread on the forums. Check it out if you want. I'll refer you to the King for a Day thread that MJ started. That was a great thing. Where if you were king of City State for the day, one thing would you want to change about the game? And we looked at that. Damn Skippy, we looked at it. So a lot of those things got prioritized too. Let's see, number 3 on that list. Design. Ben and Max did a lot of work on updating the documentation, wrote up a whole bunch of stuff. If you are confused about things, go check the manual. The manual is sexy. The manual has, just page after page of live naked instructions, dancing there for your amusement. It's gorgeous.
And there's more updates to it coming.
Yeah. Right. My goal is to add features so fast that you can't update the manual.
That's a good goal.
Number 4, I'm swapping out the thing on this list. Shadows and lighting was what will be in the email, but I covered that for Wormling. So I'll say system stats and metrics. A lot of you have seen the Steam hardware survey, which, you know, just percentage of people doing what on what kind of system that Valve does. We put in a little bit of that. We totally anonymize the stuff and just track like what machines are actually playing the game. So we have a clear guidance on how many players would we lose if we went to only a 64-bit client right now, and the answer is like 2. So
George is in the chat and he wants to insert something. Building the destruction of buildings into the building code so that when you build buildings, the destruction that we built can destroy the buildings you built.
Yes.
It all comes crashing down.
So, when I was doing the push on putting the buildings together for beta, the branch to just thaw it all out and make it like fast and slick and everything was called Make Buildings Great Again. The branch for building destruction is called Unmake Buildings Great Again. That in my non-meeting time, that's where I've been working for the most part this week. Last week seems so long ago. Wow. So anyway, we have much better guidance on, where we can draw the line on features in terms of making people happy or not happy. We also have this stuff correlated back to crash logs, so we're able to say, oh yeah, like looks like this crash is coming exclusively from people with this model video card or something like that, which lets us prioritize things and also hone in on like just okay, well we can't repro that. Oh, the problem is no one in the office is running that video card. So that is good stuff. Yeah. Number 5, tech general beta polish. I think I covered that in the Wormling notes. Number 6. This is another tech thing. We have up to branching of content. Like if you know how source control works, it's I can make a branch of the code, incrementally make my changes there, test it, eventually merge it back in. But we've had a very straight line forward path on content, on changing assets, on changing models, on changing a bunch of the spreadsheets, all the stuff like that. So what we, and it's just, put a new model in on Hatchery and then push everything on Hatchery forward to, to Nuada Prep and Nuada and Wormling Prep and Wormling. And so we are doing some work to actually make the content itself a little more branchable, and that's gonna be that's what'll allow us to make content spot fixes directly on Wormling Prep without having that go through the full Hatchery push, and enable us to make isolated fixes without pushing everything forward. And what we had was good enough for beta, no kidding. I mean, we got here, but in order to let people go nuts on, let the art team go nuts on Hatchery without breaking Wormling, we need to do this. So that's some of the tech debt that we sort of incurred and have to repay now. Number 7. Number 7 and 8. I'm just going to pull this all together. There was a ton of animation work that we had just said, because we didn't have the ability to branch content, we said, just hold off. Don't actually put this into the build yet. It looks beautiful. It's not a diss on you. We just don't want to modify the stuff that's on the Wormling bus. So now they, the goalie was pulled. And they have put in a ton of stuff. A whole bunch of new animations for characters, death animations, a lot of the fabric part animations have been redone. New fidgets for every race and realm and gender, and lots of class-specific fidgets, like trying to just give all of these characters, even when they're standing there, you look at a guy standing there and it's like, oh yeah, that is a Lucrepan archer.
The physician tossing his bottle is one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, it's so. Check that out. That's not on Wormling yet, but if you have IT access, or if you played in one of the alpha tests on Nuada, you got to see those, and you know, that's the part where this starts to come alive. John, number 9, sculpts. John has been doing props, armor sculpts, body sculpts. He's been making the models. And number 10, I mentioned DB, just huge volume of stuff. You know, our very own Decibel Master. You see the pun? Volume of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just put a lampshade on that one. So a ton of things that are in now. There's updated combat music. A bunch of missing footsteps are fixed. There's victory music, and a whole host of small things for various combat stuff. You know, there is a month's worth of new audio work that is on Hatchery and Nuita now. So, you know, unmute your computer. I know, you know, I know you're all just like watching with the sound off, just like, yes, I want to have the sight of, you know, all the beards. So many beards. I just like to sit there and watch it in silence. But no, unmute that shit. Listen to the noise. It sounds good. And so that is our top 10 list. You know, it's not on here, but I've been doing cool stuff with buildings for the next push. That'll be sooner than you think. So yeah, we'll do Q&A. Always exciting. Who knows? I may say something I'm not supposed to.
Oh boy. All right, well, give us your programming questions. Andrew is lead programmer and co-founder of City State Entertainment. And you can also ask intern questions of intern Ian.
Also hats, beard grooming. We do those things.
Odilvik asks, could you tell us why we should all be excited about the 64-bit client and all the cool new things it will allow?
Okay, so right now we are kind of bumping up against the maximum memory that we can keep in a 32-bit client. So, you know, just starting right off, like, all the textures can be higher res. Like, they're already high res, you know, on our hard drives, but we have to actually deploy them to you as high res, and that'll look good. You know, no concern. There's still roughly, you know, we fixed a bunch of memory leaks and things like that, so the client's in a good place, but, you know, no concerns about, we still have probably 10% of our crashes are from running out of memory when too many people in a zone are all editing buildings at the same time. Ian knows about that.
Yeah, a lot of building testing.
Yeah. So that'll also get better. And you know, it just removes a ceiling. So, you know, it'll get to the point where we use slightly more memory. We're not looking to significantly increase the memory requirements, but it will change the, you know, we go slightly above that high water mark, and the game maybe slows down and swaps a little instead of just completely crashing out. So those are the big wins. Also, as part of that, you might have noticed that you look in your task manager and there's like 25 client.exes running in the background. Maybe more like 8, but that'll go away and pull together into you know, one single integrated process, and that's gonna let us manage like our CPU a lot better instead of having like some of the background processes you know, interrupt the main render process. So those are the things that'll make better. There's a few things in terms of terrain that we just, you know, well, that's as high as that knob is allowed to go. There's a few other rendering things that we're gonna need to do. We're gonna need 64 bits to. So you notice when you run around in the world, like there's ambient light all around, and there's like this sense of like, you know, if you're standing on green grass, you've got some green light bouncing off the grass onto you. But we're using that everywhere in the world. And the reason we do that is because it just takes memory to store like these kind of light probes of what does the surrounding light look like over there? What does the surrounding light look like over there? So we do it all off of U, and so that'll free up memory for that. And we've kept that turned off specifically because of 32-bit. Another thing in that is, really anything where we need to like sort of cache rendering data for parts of the world. It'll enable turning on shadows on point lights, which I know is a big ticket item for a lot of people in the Builders Brigade, because they hang a torch on the wall and you see you hang a torch on the wall inside a room and there's light shining outside of the building, and that's just, well, we need shadows for that. So those are slightly farther down things that we'll be able to start doing once we flip over to 64-bit, but those things aren't immediately waiting the way just higher res textures are. So, good summary, hopefully.
Seems like it. Adricortesia asks, what were the first lines of code for CU? Where do you even start to build an engine?
So the very first lines, like so I had kind of like a long-term math and utility library, vectors, that kind of stuff. That stuff, there's an octree tree. That stuff moved forward and just, as is, dropped right in. The first lines of code that were written very specifically for CU, literally put a window on the screen. Just open up direct, like, application class and window class and WinMain, and literally just open a window, connect DirectX to it, draw a triangle. Like, it really was that basic. Yeah, I probably copied and pasted a DirectX example. Yeah, and some of that code's still there. Yeah.
Wow. Mehuge asks, what cool stuff have you been doing with buildings?
So, two things. First off, just resurrecting destruction and making sure that destruction itself works and is going to scale. And secondly, building morphs have been out there for a while as a thing that sort of halfway worked, and doing a big cleanup on those, so that under the hood, that makes destruction a lot easier to fix those. So yeah, those two things are the main stuff that I've been doing. And yeah, I can just go like stream for a couple hours after this if nobody's screaming about anything. It'll mostly be me going through and being like, fuck, why is that broken?
For people who came in late, could you briefly go over this weekend's testing schedule once more?
Yes. This weekend's test is going to be on Wormling. It is going to be Saturday, August 11th. That is tomorrow. It will be from noon to 3 p.m. Eastern. It will be from 9 a.m. to noon Pacific, or 1600 to 1900 UTC. Yeah, you know me. So, in terms of what's going to be in that build, it's like I said, internally we've just pushed ahead. Like, big major sweeping changes are all on hatchery, kind of stabilizing towards the next major release. So this is a minor point release to what was there last weekend. Highlights are lots of just UI bug fixes, fix for stuff in shadow just turning way too dark. We got rid of the like gray and orange boxes around interactable objects like supply tents, and there's all new VFX for that looks a lot better. Bunch of minor skill and combat fixes. The biggest one is that stones do not affect other stones anymore. So you can't put down two invulnerability stones right next to each other and have them make each other invulnerable and totally, just be indestructible because of that. Game is game throttles itself when you minimize it, so that if you minimize the game, it doesn't crush your CPU and make your computer unusable. And the ever-present little performance improvements and crash fixes. There's at least 25% of the crashes we saw last weekend should be fixed. So it's a minor point release. It's definitely a just come in. It's not a thing that like we need a ton of testing, but it's the kind of thing where, hey, if you want to just come in and kill people, you should come in and kill people this weekend, because it'll be a really great, stable, good experience. And that is on Wormling, noon Eastern, 1600 UTC. Tomorrow.
Zube has a question for Ian. What is the most requested type of donut?
I haven't had to get donuts yet, so I'm gonna guess, because I saw Tim eating one this morning. It was one with sprinkles.
Now, I am a big fan of the Homer Classic. You know, just strawberry frosting, rainbow sprinkles, like.
Bacon.
No.
So there's a place like near here called Duck Donuts, and I'm not kidding. They have a bacon donut. It's just like covered all over in bacon, and it's ridiculous. Like, I can't handle it. It's more bacon than I can eat.
Dark Society Network, aka Apollon, aka volunteer translator extraordinaire, asks, how long until you switch to strings instead of hard-coded text so localization can start?
Next question.
Jason L. wants to know what class you're looking forward to playing.
What class am I looking forward to playing? Yeah, any of the mage classes, really. I mean, it's, you know, I want to put that back in. I want that turned back on. I miss my wind walls. Those were hilarious.
What about you, Ian?
I'm really enjoying archers right now, but I also haven't played much of the tanks yet, and I remember from earlier alpha testing while I've been here, the Black Knights running around, but pretty much all of the melee just running around and being able to just truck through the entire ranged camp and just watch people scatter.
Oldovik passes along a question from Pest. Pest asks, now that Beta 1 has started, what game elements or features need to happen before the ability creator is enabled again for testing?
Very short answer is we turn it back on and see what's broken and fix those things. So you may see it turned back on Hatchery fairly soon, and we will just learn. So for Beta 1, we definitely just like, all right, contain the scope to this tiny subset, and you know, a lot of the things that work, a lot of the things you can make with it do in fact work great. There are a few things where like it was possible to make an ability where the effect would crash a client, and that was bad. So, you know, expect a little bit of instability in the short term, and it'll be back on. I don't have an exact timeline for when we're going to turn it back on, but yeah, it's basically just turn it back on and see.
Yomi GW2 asks, what was one of the biggest challenges you faced that you can think of so far in programming for CU?
Been so many. For me personally, it was I'd never tried to build anything this big and this real time in .NET, and finding out the sort of unwritten rules of, you know, this is how it theoretically works, but these are the things where, you know, it won't perform well if you do them. So this is genuinely my first like major project, anything this big and this real time in C#. So it was learning the cases where, well, yes, it's working as documented, but there's this asterisk, and that's been a huge a path of growth.
On the YouTube chat, Andrukin99 asks, how much of an impact will more CPU cores affect performance in CU?
It'll affect it good. Yeah, don't. We are very, very aggressively multi-threaded, up to the point where you just become limited on your video card, and then no amount of CPU power is going to help that. Another thing I'll just generally shout out. Threadripper 2's coming. It's exciting, but with that many cores, if you are building a system, pay very good attention to the speed of your memory. Not just the PC 3200, PC whatever, but also the little latency timings. It is possible with CU to get to a place where more cores do not, even though we're using more cores, they don't make it faster because you are just sitting there waiting on more, like you just have more cores waiting on data from memory. So you see these 32 core monsters. If they don't have enough memory to keep all of those cores supplied with data to process, those cores are going to stall more than you realize. So if you were building a system for Threadripper, memory, make sure that those cores can get the data in and out. But CU in general will use all the cores. Just make sure that it's very easy to build a machine that will get video card bound. So balanced. Don't just get more cores. Get better memory to go with your cores. Get a better video card to go with your cores and your memory. Whichever thing is the slow part will end up your bottleneck. But assuming the memory and video card are good, we will use all of those cores.
Focusing on programming questions here, Strike asks, after 64-bit is done, will the next goal be DX12?
We are more likely to go down a Vulkan path. But that is on the radar. That was one of the things that we were actually talking about this morning in one of those big planning meetings I mentioned. No timeline on that to talk about, but yeah, that's... I would not rule that out.
Looking for more programming questions.
You can ask me design questions. I may just... I may make up an answer.
Here's something that's maybe in between. Racknock asks, can I use the physics to create a trap base that has false floors and falling boulders and blocks, so my crafter alt can run into my haunted trap house on the waterfront on the warfront to escape?
So there's nothing on the schedule right now about specific triggers or nothing like redstone planned in the buildings. One of the things that, and I'll say that's less of a tech restriction and more of a where do we want this game to be? We feel like it's not necessarily a great medieval fantasy battle if people are using Cube to build giant 8-bit processors or Nintendo emulators or any of the insane things people have done with Minecraft. So we kind of want a little bit more, just limit the scope to what is right for this game. And maybe there will be another game where the sky really is the limit, or even higher than that. Maybe it'll be in space. Okay. But what is planned in the very, very short term is attaching objects to buildings. So a big part of making buildings themselves something that you attack in Siege is going to include a really robust doors, attaching siege weapons, and that also means attaching torches to walls. So I would not necessarily rule out placeable trap objects where they are kind of under CSE control, but building your own Rube Goldberg impossible machine redstone thing is just a little out of scope of medieval fantasy warfare. That could, if we allowed people to bring the full power of just modern engineering theory into the game, that in itself could be like such an insanely unbalancing thing that should make it another game where like that is the focus.
Method Rick asks, why the heck you chaps using jQuery, Lodash, and underscore for UI?
I'm gonna kick that one to JB. But in general, we have the general philosophy has been of, using the absolute, or is the question, why are you using all three? Or is the question...
well, the emphasis is on the and, so I think so.
So part of that just comes from the mod squad where, people do things. And, we're not going to say, no, we don't want your code because you used the wrong library. Our primary focus is going to continue to be on React, but, we don't necessarily want to burn down code just because. So those are three libraries that have somewhat overlapping functions.
Odovic asks, have you had a chance yet to fix the HBAO plus graphical setting for NVIDIA users?
Have not had a chance. It's got some weird stuff about when toggling on and off. But if you want to mention a specific thing, then let me know. I'm not aware of the exact specific issue off the top of my head because I've been kind of server and building focused lately, but it is probably a thing in George's queue.
K Fizzle asks, does anyone in the office run CU on Linux?
Nope. So, however, there is definitely a path to moving more and more of our servers over to Linux in the fairly short term. A little bit about that. The way we do things, like we built everything Windows first, and that's got a huge advantage for development where like one person can be sitting there on one Windows box and hit one button and make a build of the client and the server and all the infrastructure around it and just run it all right there on one machine, one debugger debugging it all, and that's like a huge advantage for our development. The disadvantage of that is that Windows hosting, when you go to Amazon or Google or even Microsoft, hosting on Windows is way more expensive than Linux. So as we are scaling up, server costs on, when it was just like me and Tim and Dave, that, and we had one little server, that didn't really make a difference. But as we were getting into these bigger and bigger tests, yes, server costs are running up. So we are definitely at the point where getting our servers onto Linux using .NET Core is going to pay for itself in terms of the engineering time that we have to devote for it. So that's going to happen fairly soon. In terms of running the client on Linux, obviously we're pretty DirectX centric. So I will, Vulkan is, like I said, Vulkan is on the radar. And whether or not we have an officially supported Linux client is, but we'll be a lot closer to, having that ability. Whether, the engine itself ends up running on Android or Switch or any of the other platforms, probably, not for CU, but maybe Cube.
Brizzle Sprout asks, why did you choose C# over other languages?
Let's start off with managed versus unmanaged. Why is the game server in C#? Or why is the game server in a managed language? So it's not all in managed code. A lot of things like the physics and the building system that run on the server and all the like proxy handling, all the proxies that handle each individual user are all like really, really optimized C where that's appropriate. The high-level game logic is all in C#. That's, first off, just why not C or Rust or something equally low level, and that was, I think we can be a lot more productive on the high level game language, on the high level gameplay stuff, in a language where you're not obsessing over pointers as you go. Why did we choose C# over F# or Kotlin or Java or I felt like my personal favorite language in the world is F#. Why did we choose C#? So it was the right compromise between features and power versus being able to, hire people who already knew the language. I think C# is a much, much better VM in general than Java, especially Java 5 years ago. Java's gotten a little bit better, but, 5 years ago when we started this, C# had real generics, it had lambdas, and, it was just that far ahead of Java back then that, there was no contest. It's been really good to us. We've had a good time with it.
The man with no screen name asks, a question for Ian. In your summer with CSE, what things have you learned or experienced there that you feel will influence you the most as a game dev? Is there anything that changed your notions or ideas on game dev that you had before you started?
That what I've learned, the biggest thing that I've learned so far is that in the very beginning, when I was doing the initial interviews, when they're saying this is going to be different than everything you've seen, and this is going to be on a larger scale than everything you've seen, I didn't truly understand how different it was going to be. I knew that it was going to be much more complex than what I had seen before and what I've written before, but not to the extent that it was. Like, when they said that you're going to be working with 3 different application level programs, I was like, oh yeah, okay, there's going to be 3 different huge things that I'm going to be playing with. It's that, and then each of those have backends that have 5 different things that they work with, and they all talk to each other. And so what I've done so far is just sort of touching the surface and then poking at the little fish that are swimming in the pond and trying to get interaction with them.
So when you go back to college, how will you be different? Or what things will you take to, CS 301 or whatever that would be different if you had not interned here?
I'm going to pay a lot more attention to the small things that at the time don't seem very important. Especially looking at the low-level stuff that we do. When I was taking the low-level course, or for low-level programming, so actual memory management, there was a lot of lectures where they talked about, outside of exactly what we were learning, structures of the CPU and the way different things interacted that were interesting. But at the time I was like, okay, this isn't going to be on the assessment or on my homework, so I'm going to zone out a little bit and focus more on exactly what you're doing. Whereas now it's like, oh, here's that thing that we talked about that I remembered that we talked about, but that's about as far as I can go right now.
Well, come back next summer, we'll teach you about AVX intrinsics, so you can vectorize code by hand yourself.
Oh boy.
Method Rick asks, how much of the network architecture are you able to share?
So there's kind of a high level and a low level. The high level is that the client is talking to 2 systems. One of them is the proxy, which has, I'll start with the web API. The UI is talking to a web API that is literally a HTTP REST server. There's WebSockets as well. It's, you open your inventory window, that is a web page, and it says, hey, give me an update on the inventory, and you get back a JSON blob that's, here's what's in your inventory, and it's using GraphQL and so on, totally standard technology. Most of the in-game UI can just literally pop out to a web browser and be used outside the game, which is really, really cool in terms of what people might be able to, mod or add on or remix or whatever down the road. But yeah, that protocol is it is REST over HTTP. The fancier part is talking to the proxy. The proxy is the proxy has two connections. One of them is TCP, which through TLS, and that is sending back Google protobufs back and forth, and that's kind of set up and establish the connection and send larger messages that are, like big state things. Hey, you need to switch to this other zone. The things that aren't like the in the heat of the moment entity updates. And the last part that we have is a UDP connection that is just sending packets back and forth all the time, and that is just world state. That's, this guy was over here last frame, now he's over here. This guy started casting a spell. This guy drew his bow. Oh, there's a projectile flying through the air at this position with this velocity. All of those kinds of things, and that is by far the bulk of our traffic, and that is very, very bespoke. Like, I'm not gonna start in on that. That's a thing where, if we ever get time away from actually writing the thing, we could probably get some patents on it, but right now we're just gonna write it.
Question from Sacrix.
Sacrix.
To
I have to
Andrew.
do this.
Since he does interviews.
Actually, you know what we should do, Max?
What should we do?
We should, like, next time there's a playtest and Sacrix is on Discord.
Killing us all.
Yeah, we should record Sacrix's voice and just, like, play his cackle every time he asks a question on stream. He has the most amazing cackle.
All right.
So
well,
anyway.
imagine the Sacrix cackle as I ask this question. To Andrew, since he does interviews, what is with being so picky and lack of hires in 6 months with 7.5 million?
So there have been more hires than we've announced. We try not to talk about people in case they don't work out, because sometimes they don't. Ian, we're letting Ian out here because he's only got a week to screw up too badly. So, but there have been other hires that we have not announced yet. In terms of being picky, it's we're trying to do something really ambitious here, and you get into a situation where, like, all right, well, we've got the client optimized, so much that, like, 1 extra millisecond is like, well, that took 20% off our frame rate because one bit of bad code. So we need good people. We're willing to invest in the right people and help them grow, but hiring has gone better. We have, there are hires we haven't announced, and there are like several of them, and there are new people starting fairly soon. So you will be seeing the results of that. But yeah, I still I like working with smart people. I'm not going to name any names, but there have been some people who didn't work out where it was, they made more work for other programmers than they necessarily accomplished themselves. So hard problems require smart people. I don't apologize for that. We have an amazing team, though. You're going to go somewhere else and you're going to be like, man, these people are dumb. I wish Andrew had, not hired half of these people.
Andrew calling out the rest of the industry. KSG Jagged asks, since there will be subscriptions, what is your plan for PCI security?
I don't want to say too much. Actually, so I'm going to take this to make a general announcement. We had, up till now, we have had kind of a below the radar, very friendly community. As we are getting bigger and more visible, and having more people who aren't just like Kickstarter backers coming in and paying attention to us, the pressure, the potential for people trying to hack accounts or something like that, there are people who are going to be trying to do those things more than has happened in the past. So I want to emphasize to everyone, make sure you're not using the same password on multiple sites or something like that. Like, please use a password manager. Please, don't set your password to 123456. Don't, just the basic stuff. It's been a thing that didn't really matter until now because people were, it was such a low-key friendly community. The bigger we are, the more we have to be on our guard. So, basic internet security, please start paying a little more attention to that with your CU account if you haven't been. Enough about that. So, in terms of personal information, there's and account security. There are several major things that are going up that we have on the back end. The first is just number one, we do not actually have your credit card. We are outsourcing all of that. We do not have to worry about keeping track of anyone's finances, financial information by design. In terms of, and another thing is our business model is based on, this is horribly retro and old school in 2018, but providing a quality product in exchange for money, not, providing something for free and getting all your demographic info and then selling it off to someone else and showing you ads targeted based on what we figured out about the kind of dog that you own based on how you used our game. No, fuck that. We have we actively avoid knowing your personal information here. We try really hard to not know your personal information, and that's that's the biggest way to just never have a breach, is not to have data to breach. In terms of personal security, there's a big change that's going to be coming through to our auth system fairly soon to kind of limit the scope of what you can do. Like, a login through the patcher will be flagged as this has access to play the game, but not to change your password or something like that. So like having narrowly tailored permissions is going to become a thing fairly soon, and off of that before too long we're going to start supporting 2FA on the logins, but that's kind of phase 2 after the like fine-grained auth permissions comes in, which is that's in a branch, and it's going to be like in the next week or two we're going to turn that on, I hope. So I hope I have covered all facets of that. Number one, just don't know things. Number two, anyway. And by the way, yes, don't use the same password that for Camelot Unchained that you used for LinkedIn, because their entire database got hacked and published on the internet. Or for Yahoo, because their entire database of usernames and passwords got hacked and put on the internet. Or, a lot of you probably played D&D Online or, any of the Turbine games. Their entire database got hacked and put on the internet. Or actually, Kickstarter. Their entire database, which half of you guys, at least used Kickstarter at one point. Their entire database of usernames and passwords got put on the internet. So I can't emphasize this enough. Don't use the same username and password on multiple sites, because someone out there has that combination, and they'll just try and find your account that way.
All right, we are at the 5-minute warning mark. So 5-minute warning. Strike asks, when is the beta beard coming off?
That's so hard, because I'm used to it. I'm so attached to it. I feel like it's a part of me. I don't remember not having the beard. I don't know. Maybe we'll shave it at DragonCon. Maybe we'll. So I personally just my personal vacation is to go to DragonCon every year.
So if anybody's downloading any major things, stop for a little while longer.
Yeah, so my I personally have just, coming up on, this is like my 9th year going down there for Labor Day, so that snowballed into starting to do some CU panels. So if you've ever been to Dragon Con, it's basically like Mardi Gras with Spock ears. It's a big nerdy party, and yeah, maybe we'll do something there. Shave my beard, roll it up, smoke it. Who knows?
All right.
With the beard oil, that might not be that bad.
Yeah, that beard oil's very, very pleasant.
Sacrix asks, do you see any more problems connected to server-side processing, such as problems with wonky collision, causing network problems with lag come endgame, and more stuff added? Can that side of things handle it?
Yes, it can. There's a lot of good isolation. I touched on the network architecture of your client talking to the server, but the proxies run independently of the game server, which runs independently of the physics server. So, things with collision aren't going to break networking. They're on totally separate boxes.
All right, this might be a nice question to end with. The man with no screen name asks, question, what about game dev, whether for CU or other projects, lured you into the industry in the first place? And what about it keeps you clocking into work each day?
I'd say all the cocaine.
Wait, we have cocaine? Where?
Well, not now. I snorted it all. No. So my drug of scotch. My drug of choice is single malt by far. But yeah, I've literally never, almost never not been a game developer. I got first exposed to programming when I was like 6 with BASIC on a little Sinclair ZX81, Timex Sinclair 2000, something like that. And I made a game where like an alien that was like an asterisk and a greater than sign moved down the text screen. Actually, no, it moved up because I was 6 and I couldn't figure out how to like move things the other direction. So I've just always been fascinated by it. Like the idea of being able to write a bunch of things and suddenly there's like a world that you interact with, even if it's like a really crude one with asterisks for aliens. I think the challenges are more also just on an engineering level. The challenges are more interesting than you run into in a lot of things that aren't game dev. So we solve crazy problems that a lot of people doing other things, like you said, it's like, that's not a thing to worry about. It's like, we get to pay attention to that. That's cool stuff. So that's what keeps me coming in every day. Honestly, it's you guys. Like, I love having this really tight loop of make a change, and that in the morning and that afternoon someone is using it to kill somebody on hatchery. I am so completely looking forward to rolling out building stuff and seeing, like, before the end of the month, like, that, towers, getting damaged and destroyed. Like, I want to see what you guys do with it.
Cry as all of our previous creations no longer stand up.
Yeah, stability's coming back on. Sorry, it's gonna happen.
No more floating islands.
Well, shall we close out the stream?
All right. Let's play it out. Viking Navy.
All right. We will see you later. Keep an eye out for any messages from us. And remember, there's a test tomorrow from noon our time to 3 our time.
Yes. See y'all there.
See you later.